Have you ever felt completely drained after an argument, even when you won? That's because defending yourself isn't strength, it's giving away your power. Every time you explain, justify, or react, you're letting someone else control your energy, your emotions, your life. What if I told you the real power isn't in fighting back, it's in staying calm, silent, and unshakable? In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you why defending yourself makes you weaker and how mastering restraint can make you stronger than anyone who ever tried to push you around. When you think about defending yourself, most people immediately imagine standing your ground, speaking your truth, proving that you are right, and showing that you cannot be pushed around. From a surface level, it seems like the obvious way to protect yourself. If someone criticizes you, attacks your character, or challenges your decisions, the natural impulse is to respond, to defend your actions, and to correct the record. This instinct is so deeply wired into human nature that it feels not only natural but necessary. We have been conditioned to believe that silence equals weakness, that if we do not speak up, people will walk over us, disrespect us, or take advantage of our perceived passivity. But what we rarely notice is that every time we engage in defense, we are handing a part of our energy, our power, and our presence over to the very person we are trying to stand against. Defending yourself creates a relationship dynamic in which the other person becomes the center of your emotional universe. When someone criticizes you, your mind immediately shifts to the other person, what they think, what they feel, what they are saying, and how they are perceiving you. This shift is subtle but profound. It draws your attention away from your own inner world, your own calm, and your own priorities, and places it squarely on external validation. You start analyzing their words, constructing rebuttals, worrying about their judgment, and planning your responses. Each step in this process strengthens the presence of the attacker in your mind and weakens your own grounded sense of self. By defending yourself, you are acknowledging that their attack has power over you, that their opinion is capable of shaping your reality. The very act of explanation, justification, or argument signals to your mind that you are reacting, not acting, that you are being led by external forces rather than guided by your own inner compass. Over time, this repeated pattern creates a subtle erosion of confidence. You begin to measure your value, your dignity, and your emotional state against how others perceive you. You begin to live in a space where your reactions are constantly dictated by the energy and behavior of those around you. Each defensive act, no matter how small, chips away at the foundation of autonomy that you carry naturally. And there is a hidden consequence that most people overlook. Defending yourself also gives your attacker a roadmap. When you respond to an insult, a criticism, or an accusation, you are inadvertently providing feedback. You are revealing your triggers, your sensitive points, and your emotional vulnerabilities. The person on the other side, whether consciously or unconsciously, learns exactly which buttons to press to elicit a reaction from you. Each defensive interaction becomes a training session for the other person. They learn what provokes you, what makes you anxious, what irritates you, and what draws you into their energy. And as they learn these patterns, your responses no longer remain solely your own. They become predictable, controlled, and even manipulated by someone else. True strength lies not in proving a point or defending a stance. True strength lies in maintaining your composure, presence, and sense of self irrespective of the attack. When you do not defend yourself, when you choose not to explain, justify, or argue, you immediately shift the balance of power. Suddenly, the attacker realizes that their words no longer have the expected effect. They are met with silence, with calm, with an unshakable center that is completely unaffected by their attempts to provoke. By not defending yourself, you create a psychological space where your energy remains yours, where your mind remains uncluttered by the need to justify, and where your emotional resources are fully available to you. This is why defending yourself makes you weaker. It fragments your attention, it validates the attacker's power, and it trains them to exploit your reactions. Every defensive act, however small, is a compromise of sovereignty. It is a subtle surrender to external forces, and in human interactions, the subtle surrenders accumulate faster than we notice. One day, you wake up and realize that you are constantly reacting, constantly explaining, constantly justifying, and that your emotional state is dependent on how others treat you. Your strength has been gradually depleted by the very acts you believed were protective. There is also a social consequence to consider. People who habitually defend themselves often communicate desperation, insecurity, or a need for validation without consciously intending to. Their energy signals to others that they are reactive rather than stable, that they are negotiable rather than grounded, that their emotional state is contingent on approval. This perception may cause others to push boundaries, test limits, and continue challenging them, knowing that the defensive cycle will draw them in. Conversely, when a person does not defend themselves, they project an energy of unshakable composure, independence, and internal authority. This does not mean they accept disrespect or abuse. It means they have chosen a method of engagement that preserves their power, controls the dynamics of influence, and does not allow external forces to dictate their emotional landscape. In addition, defending oneself often requires mental and emotional resources that could be better used elsewhere. Every moment spent crafting a rebuttal, analyzing criticism, or responding to an attack is a moment spent outside your own center of gravity. Your mind becomes cluttered with the narratives of others instead of focusing on your goals, your clarity, and your growth. Energy is finite. By continually investing it in defense, you are diverting it from creation, from presence, from action, and from the cultivation of inner strength. Ironically, the more defensive you are, the more exhausted you feel, the less confident you become, and the weaker your presence appears. Those who master the art of non-defense, on the other hand, conserve their energy, maintain clarity, and display a quiet power that is both magnetic and untouchable. They understand that real influence comes not from reaction, but from restraint, not from argument, but from authority, not from explanation, but from self-possession. This approach also transforms the nature of relationships and social interactions. When you stop defending yourself, you cease participating in the tug of war of ego, control, and approval that dominates much of human communication. Others are forced to confront your independence, your stability, and your refusal to be drawn into unnecessary conflict. In this way, non-defense is not passivity, it is strategic mastery. It is the conscious decision to place your power beyond the reach of those who would diminish it, the deliberate choice to protect your energy rather than expend it in proving yourself. Over time, this practice strengthens not only your mind and emotional resilience, but also your overall presence. People instinctively recognize the strength of someone who does not defend themselves. There is a magnetic quality to unshakable composure, a subtle authority that cannot be contested through words or attacks, and a clarity that communicates confidence without explanation. By breaking the habit of defending yourself, you also break the habit of internalizing attacks. You no longer allow the opinions, criticisms, or provocations of others to shape your self-perception or define your worth. Your energy remains contained, directed, and available for growth, creation, and mastery of your own life. In essence, defending yourself is like giving away your ammunition while still being in the battlefield. Every defensive act is a surrender of mental, emotional, and spiritual resources. It may seem harmless at the moment, but the cumulative effect is weakening, draining, and corrosive to your inner authority. Those who understand this principle, who learn to remain unshaken and silent, who resist the urge to explain or justify, cultivate a type of strength that is invisible but undeniable, a strength that does not need to prove itself, a strength that cannot be taken by force, and a strength that transforms every interaction into an opportunity to assert presence rather than to react. When we talk about strength, most people immediately think about action, confrontation, and the ability to fight back. We assume that to be strong means to respond, to argue, to defend, or to assert ourselves verbally or physically. But there is a different kind of strength, one that is less obvious yet far more powerful. A strength that comes from silence and restraint. Silence is not weakness. Restraint is not surrender. True strength is measured not by how loudly you respond to provocation, but by how unshakable you remain in the face of it. When you choose silence over reaction, you are making a conscious decision to preserve your energy, maintain your composure, and control the narrative of your own life. Every word you speak carries weight, and when you speak impulsively in defense, you give away that weight to someone else. Silence, on the other hand, becomes a force that communicates authority without explanation. It signals to the world that you are grounded, that you are not easily manipulated, and that your inner sense of self is beyond the reach of criticism. Restraint works similarly. When confronted with provocation, choosing not to react impulsively demonstrates control over your emotions, which is a hallmark of power. Reacting emotionally may give the illusion of strength in the moment, but it actually reveals vulnerability. Others can see the threads that pull at your nerves, the buttons that provoke you, and the areas where they can influence you. Restraint, however, conceals those vulnerabilities. By exercising control over your responses, you remove the opportunity for others to manipulate or dominate you. There is also a psychological effect to consider. Silence and restraint force the other party to confront the limits of their influence. When you do not react as expected, their attempts at provocation lose their power. They are met with calm instead of chaos, composure instead of conflict. This shift changes the dynamics of interaction. Suddenly, the energy they have been attempting to impose upon you has nowhere to land. They begin to experience frustration, confusion, and even respect for the calm that cannot be shaken. Furthermore, silence and restraint provide a space for clarity. In moments of provocation, the mind that reacts impulsively is clouded by emotion, by the need to justify, and by the urgency to prove oneself. By choosing silence, you create a pause, a buffer that allows perspective, rational thinking, and strategic decision-making to emerge. This is where true strength manifests in the ability to act from a position of clarity rather than compulsion. Another aspect of this kind of strength is preservation. Human energy is finite. Every defensive argument, every reactive outburst, every attempt to counter another's words drains a portion of your life force. Silence conserves energy. Restraint amplifies presence. When you remain unshaken, you are able to allocate your energy toward goals, growth, and personal development rather than squandering it in fruitless conflict. Silence also has a magnetic quality. There is a psychological principle in human interactions: the less predictable and more composed a person is, the more attention they command. By exercising restraint, you create a sense of depth, wisdom, and authority. People are naturally drawn to those who do not give away their power with every provocation, those who respond with measured presence rather than impulsive reaction. Restraint does not mean inaction. It does not mean tolerating abuse or passivity in situations that demand boundaries. Rather, it is a disciplined choice to respond with intentionality rather than compulsion. Strength amplified through silence is active, deliberate, and commanding because it arises from internal mastery rather than external validation. Over time, practicing silence and restraint reshapes your relationships, your environment, and your internal state. Others learn to recognize the limits of their influence over you, your focus sharpens, and your personal authority grows. You are no longer at the mercy of external chaos. Instead, You embody a presence that is deliberate, controlled, and undeniably strong. Those who master silence and restraint discover a power that is rare and resilient, a power that is not dependent on the actions, opinions, or judgments of others. It is a strength that is entirely self-contained, deeply rooted, and impossible to diminish through external force. The more you practice this, the more your presence alone becomes a force. Your calm communicates confidence. Your silence communicates authority. Your restraint communicates mastery. And in a world where so many people react impulsively, argue relentlessly, and allow themselves to be driven by provocation, this type of strength stands out, commands respect, and transforms every interaction into an opportunity to assert inner power without ever raising a defense. Reacting emotionally is one of the most common habits that quietly weakens people, even when they believe they are standing up for themselves or asserting their power. Emotions are intense, immediate, and often overwhelming, and when they take control of your actions, they cloud judgment, distort perception, and fragment focus. Think about a moment when someone insulted you, challenged your ideas, or criticized you harshly. The immediate rush of anger, hurt, or frustration feels unavoidable. Your heart races, your mind spins, and your words often come out sharp, defensive, or ill-considered. In that instant, your energy is being hijacked by emotion. You are no longer fully present in your own life. Instead, your attention is dominated by the stimulus, the person, the words, the provocation. Every moment spent reacting emotionally is a moment where your energy is being drained, siphoned away from your inner clarity, your goals, and your sense of self. Emotional reactions are powerful in appearance, but they are deceptively weak in essence because they shift control from you to the trigger. The person, event, or circumstance that provoked the reaction suddenly becomes the driver of your emotional state. In other words, by reacting emotionally, you are handing over your personal power to external forces. Your mind, which is capable of strategic thinking, focus, and intentional action, is clouded by the raw intensity of feeling. Decisions made in the heat of emotion are rarely optimal. They often prioritize immediate release over long-term gain, impulsive expression over measured action, and short-term satisfaction over sustained strength. Over time, the accumulation of emotionally reactive behavior erodes clarity. You begin to operate from a place of constant reactivity, where each interaction is filtered through the lens of previous emotional triggers. Your life becomes a series of responses rather than deliberate choices, and your energy is continuously depleted by the effort of managing heightened feelings instead of focusing on purposeful action. Emotional reactions also influence physical energy. Stress, tension, and agitation activate the nervous system in ways that are exhausting. When you are consumed by anger or frustration, your body produces stress hormones that demand energy and attention. Your sleep may be disrupted, your concentration weakened, and your overall vitality diminished. In effect, every emotional reaction is a silent thief, taking not only your mental clarity, but also your physical strength and resilience. Another critical point is that reacting emotionally often clouds communication and perception. Words spoken in anger or fear tend to be misaligned with your true intentions. They can escalate conflict, create misunderstandings, and damage relationships. You may later regret what you said, realizing that in the moment, emotion controlled the conversation rather than reason. By contrast, when you refrain from reacting impulsively, you maintain a clear mind and the ability to evaluate situations with perspective. You see beyond immediate provocations and are able to respond strategically, not instinctively. Emotional restraint does not mean suppression or avoidance. It is the conscious choice to recognize feelings without allowing them to dictate behavior. This distinction is crucial because it allows you to honor your emotions internally while preserving your external composure and influence. Maintaining clarity in the face of provocation is one of the most profound demonstrations of strength. It signals that you are not a product of circumstance or other people's behavior. Your mind is your domain, your energy your own, and your actions deliberate rather than reactive. In addition, constant emotional reactions can have long-term effects on mental and emotional health. Habitually giving in to provocation, defending yourself, or responding impulsively creates chronic stress, irritability, and anxiety. The mind becomes conditioned to anticipate conflict, to dwell on insults or offenses, and to replay grievances. This mental loop reinforces weakness, drains resilience, and undermines the capacity to act with calm authority. By choosing to refrain from emotional reactivity, you conserve energy, protect clarity, and reinforce your inner stability. You learn to distinguish between what is worth attention and what is not, between what requires engagement and what is better left unaddressed. Your life becomes guided by intentionality rather than impulse, and your energy is redirected toward growth, focus, and meaningful action. In essence, reacting emotionally is like pouring your water into a leaky vessel. No matter how much you pour, little remains for your own use. By cultivating awareness, restraint, and the ability to respond thoughtfully, you begin to preserve your energy, sharpen your clarity, and strengthen your presence. Over time, this practice transforms your interactions, your decisions, and your overall life trajectory. You are no longer a passenger of circumstance tossed about by insults or provocations. Instead, you occupy a position of control, measured power, and unshakable focus. Every emotionally reactive response avoided is a victory of energy preservation. Every moment of calm is a reinforcement of clarity. And every choice to remain composed strengthens your capacity to act from authority rather than impulse. This is why reacting emotionally drains not only your energy, but also your clarity, leaving you weaker than you realize and dependent on the triggers and judgments of others, whereas mastering emotional restraint builds unshakable strength and self-mastery that no external force can diminish. True power is not measured by how loud you can argue, how fiercely you can defend yourself, or how effectively you can dominate a situation. Most people equate strength with confrontation because it is visible, dramatic, and immediate. But real power is subtle, internal, and far more enduring. It comes from control over your mind, your emotions, your energy, and your responses. Confrontation may produce temporary results, but it is often reactive, draining, and ultimately dependent on external conditions. Control, on the other hand, is proactive, conserving, and self-generated. When you respond with control rather than confrontation, you operate from a place of authority rather than reaction. You are no longer at the mercy of other people's behavior, their judgments, or their attempts to provoke you. Control allows you to choose your actions deliberately, prioritize your energy, and navigate interactions with clarity and calm. This is why those who remain composed in the face of attacks, insults, or criticism are often more respected and feared than those who respond with immediate aggression. Control also amplifies presence. People instinctively recognize those who are unshakable, who do not react impulsively, and who maintain composure under pressure. Your energy radiates strength because it is contained, directed, and intentional. Confrontation may appear powerful, but it disperses energy outward, scattering focus and giving the other party influence over your state. By contrast, control preserves energy, focuses intention, and shapes outcomes without unnecessary conflict. Another dimension of real power is foresight. Confrontation often blinds people to consequences, as it is driven by emotion and immediate impulses. Control allows you to see beyond the present moment, anticipate reactions, and act in alignment with long-term goals rather than short-term impulses. It is the strategic mastery of influence rather than the impulsive display of force. Furthermore, control creates freedom. Those who constantly confront and defend themselves are trapped in a cycle of reaction, where every action of others can dictate their state of mind and their choices. Control liberates you from this cycle, ensuring that your peace, energy, and decisions remain independent of external factors. It shifts the locus of power from circumstance and people to your own deliberate choices. Real power is also contagious. When you maintain control in challenging situations, you inspire confidence, stability, and calm in those around you. You become a point of reference, a source of authority, and a model of unshakable strength. Confrontation, on the other hand, often escalates tension, spreads instability, and amplifies conflict rather than resolving it. Control does not mean passivity or ignoring injustice. It means asserting yourself in a way that does not compromise your energy, dignity, or composure. It is about taking action from a place of mastery rather than reaction. Every decision, every response, and every interaction is guided by intention rather than impulse. By cultivating control, you also neutralize the power of others' provocations. When someone attempts to manipulate, insult, or challenge you, control ensures that their actions do not dictate your state. You remain centered, measured, and unaffected by attempts to destabilize you. This kind of power is invisible yet undeniable. It is silent but magnetic. It cannot be challenged through aggression because it does not operate on the same level of energy as reaction or confrontation. Over time, control transforms not only your personal effectiveness, but also your relationships, your influence, and your life trajectory. People learn that you are not easily swayed, provoked, or manipulated, which enhances respect, trust, and authority. In contrast, confrontation often results in short-term wins but long-term depletion. The energy spent in arguing, proving, or defending could be better invested in strategy, creation, and growth. Control preserves that energy while delivering influence far more effectively. Real power is enduring, consistent, and self-sustaining. It does not rely on the fluctuating opinions, attacks, or provocations of others. It is rooted in self-mastery, composure, and deliberate action. Those who understand this principle move through life with unshakable confidence, presence, and authority. They do not need to defend themselves to prove their worth, argue to assert dominance, or fight to maintain relevance. Their control alone communicates strength, sets boundaries, and commands respect. Ultimately, real power comes not from confrontation, which is reactive, exhausting, and fleeting, but from control, which is intentional, sustainable, and transformative. By mastering control, you reclaim your energy, preserve your clarity, and cultivate a presence that cannot be shaken, manipulated, or diminished by the actions of others. It is a power that grows with practice, deepens with experience, and endures in all circumstances, far beyond the temporary satisfaction of conflict.